Hey y'all, and welcome to Brawl. My name is Brian, and Pete Hegseth blows this ridiculous Democrat out of the water with this simple comeback. She had no way to prepare for this. Let's dive in.
But then something else happened this weekend, and it needs to be addressed. And that is the president's premature and escalatory decision to deploy not only the National Guard troops to Los Angeles, but active duty Marines as well. Mr. Secretary, we're both from Minnesota. I was in the Twin Cities during the riots that followed the murder of George Floyd. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets for days. Governor Walz made the decision to call up the Minnesota National Guard. At no point did we need the citizens of Minnesota request that the Marines be deployed. Our state and local law enforcement, along with our National Guard, who have worked on crowd control, they were more than enough. They were more than capable of handling this situation. History has proven that law enforcement and the National Guard are more than capable of handling situations more volatile than what happened this weekend. We all see the continuous loops on TV, but this looks nothing like the George Floyd protests or the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles in 1992. Mr. Secretary, this is a deeply unfair position to put our Marines in. Their service should be honored. It should not be exploited. The President has issued an executive order and talked about deploying troops across the country. Los Angeles County has 17,000 law enforcement personnel, and the state of California has 24,000 National Guard troops. So that's why the Los Angeles Chief Police to say, and I quote, "The possible arrival of federal military forces in Los Angeles is absent a clear coordination presents a significant logistical operational challenge for those of us who are charged with safeguarding the city," the end of his quote. As I mentioned before, in Minnesota, we train for those things together. So there's no need for the Marines to be deployed. So here are my budget questions, though. What is the current cost for what is taking place in California, and how is it going to affect this budget or the budget we're currently serving under? How much are these deployments going to cost for both the Marines and the National Guard? And what training or duties are not taking place because of these deployments? Where in your limited budget, sir, are you going to find, in the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? What holes are being created?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis. The police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground. And because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late mobilized. And President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question.
Are being,
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties, because we ought to be able to enforce immigration law in this country, unlike what Governor Walz did in 2020. There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have implemented.
If
the police chief said she was overwhelmed,
if the Secretary's not
so we
going
helped.
to ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies, which is something the National Guard and the Marine plan for. So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the ground.
For budgetary, if he needs to get back to the committee with the numbers, I'd appreciate it, both current and present.
Happy to submit them for the record.
The gentlelady's time is expired, and this roast is now complete. I don't think I've seen anyone burned that bad in a committee hearing before. She tried to ask a legitimate question. What's the budgetary cost of deploying these troops? And Pete Hegseth just reminds her, what's the cost of burning down Minneapolis back during the Summer of Love when Tim Walz, the failed vice presidential nominee, tried and failed to bring in the National Guard to subdue a riot that was burning down billions of dollars of property damages. Someone make this make sense somehow. And then this Democrat is then asking a budgetary question? Give me a break. That's rich. Richer than chocolate cheesecake. Because no one in their right minds believes the Democrat Party when they talk about budgetary problems. When states like New Mexico, New York, California, Minnesota, for instance, and Illinois are all begging for the feds to take this burden away from me, Father, and deal with their budgetary problems, I don't think we can really look at the Democrat Party and say, yeah, you care about financial problems. Regardless of that reality, Pete Hegseth pulls one of the best Uno reverse cards I have seen in a long, long time. And it's not just pointing out the hypocrisy, it's pointing out the sad, disgusting fact that Democrats refuse to govern themselves. They refused to put the police on the streets when necessary. They needed this in Los Angeles days ago. Of this filming, it is June 10th, 2025. They needed a higher amount of police on Saturday, not on Tuesday, not after Trump decided to deploy the National Guard over Gavin Newsom's head, might I add. Gavin Newsom has now had to do a complete 180 from saying, yeah, Tom Homan, arrest me, I dare you, to I need to deploy some National Guardsmen as quick as I possibly can. Quite literally, the dude just deployed 800 more law enforcement officers from his own state to deal with the burgeoning problem that is these LA riots. And on one hand, this Congresswoman actually does get one thing right, not just the fact that, they both Pete Hegseth and this Congresswoman are from the state of Minnesota. She gets right the fact that these riots aren't like the Rodney King riots in LA back in 1992. They're not the same. That was tantamount to the Summer of Love riots. These riots are a little bit different. They're a little bit more taco flavored, for lack of a better phrase, because this one is done by Latinos who have lived here in the United States, who raised their kids to be Mexican, not American, and thus fly Mexican flags, burn everything they can, all because ICE decided to lawfully appropriate a raid. Okay, ICE is doing their jobs, and you have a huge segment of Los Angeles County rising up against it. By definition, I think this is called an insurrection. Funny how that works. But Pete Hegseth is not deterred by this question, and rightfully so, not only because the question itself is a bit ridiculous, but because the whole idea of deploying Marines. We have not only deployed the National Guard, Trump has now said, yeah, some local Marines, can you get in on this action? Can you start helping law enforcement to start putting down this literal insurrection? This is what it actually looks like, ladies and gentlemen. But no, the Democrat Party has to feign ignorance. They have to deflect, deny, look in the other direction, do anything they possibly can to deflect from the reality that there is a violent uprising going on in Los Angeles right now. It is still ongoing. That's a problem, ladies and gentlemen. This town was nearly burned to the ground a couple of months ago, and now humans are trying to do it on purpose. This is insane. No wonder Trump goes over Gavin Newsom's head. And by the way, I think this is the sort of final nail in Gavin Newsom's political coffin, because this dude waited too long to do anything about the situation. He then realized that I need to make some money off of this. I need to do some fundraising stuff. I need to stand up to the Trump administration. So he acts like a tough guy, dares Tom Homan to arrest him, and now he's doing the very thing Donald Trump is doing to begin with. Ladies and gentlemen, Democrats are not a serious political party. They are eventually once you put their feet to the fire, but until that happens, they refuse to do what is necessary to protect their own citizens. They refuse to do what is necessary in order to protect property. And if you don't protect the right to life, if you don't protect the right to property, you don't have liberty and you don't have the pursuit of happiness. It should be that simple, but it's not. Pete Hegseth takes this question not just like a champ, but he answers it in the correct way. And then the kicker to this whole thing is the defense budget has actually been increased in order to deal with these anticipated issues. It's almost if we knew that Democrats can't govern, and this is the end result. Pete Hegseth hits a home run. This Democrat whiffs at the plate, and good grief. An Uno reverse card in your argument tells me not only do you not have a good argument, but you don't have anything intelligent to say. Minnesotans, I know this woman represents some of you, but she doesn't represent all of you. And neither does Tim Walz. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.